Welcome to this week's episode of the Rock and Roll Ghost Podcast. Today we're talking to Martin Campbell, director of the upcoming film The Asset, as well as many others that you've seen: Goldeneye, Casino Royale, Edge of Darkness, Green Lantern, Vertical Limit. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. How are you doing today, Martin?
We're good. We're in prep for our new film, which is a film called Memory, right? And it's we're in Bulgaria yet again, and it's a film with Liam Neeson, Guy Pearce, and Monica Bellucci. So we're shooting in about 2 weeks, and
Nice.
So we're flat out here really on prepping for that.
Yeah, how long have you been in Bulgaria?
Oh God, endlessly, mate. Well, to be honest, we shot a week here for The Asset, right? Mm-hmm. And we were supposed to go to Vietnam. We couldn't because of COVID. And so we had to create our Vietnam here. And that's what we did.
Nice. Doing a little bit of a Stanley Kubrick thing. Bring Vietnam to Bulgaria.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, because of COVID, they don't let you into Vietnam. So even though we scouted it, we went there and chose all our locations, and then, of course, we couldn't go. So we recreated it, as you might say.
So what just because I'm out of my own curiosity, Bulgaria had lessened regulations on bringing people in, and Vietnam had more stringent ones?
No, Bulgaria has been very good with COVID. So much so, in fact, that I've had my vaccinations. I've had my Pfizer vaccinations, and they're very strict about, for example, we're at the studio now, we're tested twice a week. You cannot get into the studio unless you have a temperature check. They're very good. Yeah, they're very good. Much better than America, by the way, and probably a damn sight better than Chicago. Yeah,
we're slowly. I don't take that as a knock. I got my first one. I go for my second one next week. So
okay, did you do Pfizer?
Yes. I got. It was chosen for me, so I got. Yeah, I feel like I'm comfortable with that.
Oh, good. You've had them both?
No, I got my second one next week.
Well, that's
so I'm almost there. I'm almost.
Good, you're almost there. Good.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about The Asset first, because that's the movie that's coming out soon. Tell me a little bit about the film first, like what it's about, and before you do that, what kind of cocktail you're drinking?
I'm drinking margarita. Every night at 6:30, I sit with my first assistant, second assistant, and all assistants, right, and my DP, and we have a margarita. Having had a very strenuous day, having everything from location scouts to budget talks. So every night at 6:30, this is what happens.
Nice. Excellent.
It's really good. Yeah. So yes, The Asset. Richard Wenk wrote the script. Okay. I've been involved with it for a couple of years. I remember Richard brought it to me after I did The Foreigner, with a Jackie Chan film. Mm-hmm. And I read it and I liked it. And he said to me, I won't do any more work on it until the film is set up. And the film got set up, and he and I went to work, and he did the work on it, and really that's how it came about. Avi Lerner financed the whole thing, and we shot in Bulgaria. As you probably know, he has studios here. That's where we are now.
Okay.
Boyana Studios, which are very good studios. I mean, they have every facility, and that's really how it came about.
Yeah. What's the basic premise of the film, if you can tell?
Oh God, it's a very complex premise, but it's basically about it's a female assassin story, but I think way more interesting than the Atomic Blondes and the Peppermints and things like that. Largely because the story is much more. There's a lot of surprise. There's a lot of twists and turns. It's actually a very interesting story. I think that's probably the strength of it. Very good cast. Got Maggie Q playing the lead.
Right.
We have Michael Keaton, of course, and Sam Jackson. Very good cast. And I think that's really the thing about it, is that it's the story and the relationship between Keaton and Maggie Q that is very interesting, and a lot of humor too with it.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you go about assembling the cast, and what was it about each of the main actors that you really found right for the film?
Well, first of all, they're all damn good actors. Now, Maggie Q is one of the best in that kind of genre, and she's a very fine actress. She's also physically terrific. I mean, there may be one stunt in the movie she didn't do, right? And that's when she gets hit by a car. Beyond that, she did everything herself. Michael Keaton, of course, is a superb actor. And he also has that slightly quirky kind of aspect to him, which is so interesting. And I don't need to say anything about Sam Jackson, because he can do anything, Sam. So that combination, I think, was couldn't have been better.
Yeah. How long was the production in Bulgaria? How long did that last?
Well, it wasn't. It was actually in Romania. Most of it was shot in Romania. We started in Romania. The only reason we came to Bulgaria was to shoot the Vietnam week.
Vietnam, right? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, COVID fucked us up basically, because we ended up going back to, we finished here, we went to London, we shot for 3 days, and then we got out just ahead of those countries closing down. And we edited in LA. And and that was protected because of COVID. We couldn't come back until Bulgaria allowed us in to actually finish the film. So
that had to be quite a challenge. I've talked to a few filmmakers that have had to do the workaround in terms of, you know, filming during and then also having their production split up a bit.
Yeah, well, you know, of course, but I tell you, you know, once you've got the protocol in place, you can move just as fast almost. You know, once everybody obeys the rules, then you can move very fast. Because when we did the week here, the protocols were in place. Everybody had to wear a mask. There were all the usual rules. I had a week shooting, and quite frankly, it worked like clockwork. It didn't hold us up at all.
Yeah. Were you at all worried for your own health? Shooting during a pandemic?
Yeah, of course, everybody's worried. I mean, who knows? I mean, you know, you just don't know, do you? I mean, anybody can have it, and and you've got the masks on, but that doesn't guarantee. I mean, the point about this, about this virus is it's just so unpredictable. Some people have dreadful reactions. Others, a friend of mine who had a heart operation in England, a very severe heart operation. He survived it. He got COVID, didn't even know he had it.
Yeah.
So it was only when they tested for antibodies he realized he'd had it. But not a symptom.
That is an interesting part. Like, I mean, I myself never got tested, but I wasn't really around many people, so I have no idea. I, ended up getting it and just, basically was fine with it. I don't know, but it is
that's the problem. You don't know, do you?
No.
That's why they test it.
Right. The only reason the way you do know is if you get tested or if you really get symptoms and you're flat on your ass, basically.
Exactly. Well, anyway, thank God I've had my, they organized my vaccines, and obviously the same with you. You got yours, which is great. So
yeah. What about the specific material, the screenplay that Richard did was attractive to you to make it your next film? I'm sure you're always looking for work, but your last film was The Foreigner with Jackie Chan in 2017. Were you trying to take a little bit of time off, or were you just searching for the right film? And what about?
No, I was just looking for the right thing, and as I say, really just after I finished Foreigner, I read the script, and I really liked it. And Richard, as you know, does the he does the what do you call it? Films, God, Equalizer films. Right? That's Richard. He's a perfect guy to work with. And also he just wrote some very interesting stuff for the characters. There's a kind of sense of humor, some great lines, It's an intriguing story, right? An intriguing story. So that combination, I guess, I'm losing you slightly, Brett. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. You're fine now.
I can't see you, but keep talking because.
Okay. It might be on. Hopefully, it's not on my end.
I can hear you very clearly. Yes.
You froze on my end.
I'm frozen.
Oh, the thrill of Zoom.
I know all these bloody Zoom. You know what it's like, but it's fine. It'll all happen.
Yeah. No. We'll go ahead and keep as long as we can hear each other.
Keep
talking.
Keep blasting me. All right.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Well, what?
Can you hear me, Richard? Yes. I've got.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
Were you
frozen now? Sorry, you're frozen now, but it doesn't matter. You know.
Yeah, you can hear me though.
Frozen.
You can hear me?
I can now, mate. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Were you considering any other projects in between The Foreigner and taking on the asset as a definite production?
Well, here's the thing. You develop about 6 projects, right? Mm-hmm. And the point is maybe one of them will go, right?
Right.
And I've been developing this project that I'm working on now for, I guess, 2 or 3 years. You know, mm-hmm. We've had it there. We've had a good reaction to the script, and then and then finally it got set up. And so as soon as I finished the asset, I started on this. And the thing now in terms of independent filmmaking is you have to have 4 or 5 projects. One of them will go if you're lucky. That's really what it is, you know. One of them will go. So you just have to have a lot of balls in the air, basically, to make sure that you've got something that you want to do, right? So I did have 4 or 5 projects which I was working on, and we'll subsequently make one of those. I'm sure. But as you know, in this industry, a lot of the time those projects fall out.
Yeah, no, for sure. What was the longest time you developed something before it got made? Do you recall if there's one in particular that you can think of?
Well, probably that actually got made was, I'm just thinking back now, probably, it may well be this one. It may be The Asset, I think.
That's not a very long time, honestly. Some people have talked.
It was a very long time because Richard, as I said to you before, he didn't want to do any writing or rewriting on it until we had actually got the film set up. He said, you know, and I don't blame him. And the point was, I stuck with it, and then finally it was set up, and finally we got to go. It must have been 2-3 years. You know, that period must have covered that, I would have thought.
Right, that's not very long considering the industry, quite honestly.
I know. No, you're right. There's movies that took 12 years to set up. I remember. What was it? The Great Escape took 12 years to set up.
Yeah. You can imagine, like, the people involved, how, like, what it takes for them to stay involved that long. You know, like, they must really have a passion for it.
Well, John Sturges always had a passion for The Great Escape. Yeah. And he kept trying to set it up, and they turned it down. But it was only when he had a couple of hits, like The Magnificent Seven, and then he did, you know, he had a couple of big hits, and then it allowed him to make The Great Escape, which was a huge hit, of course.
Yeah. That's an insane film.
That rule applies now, quite honestly.
Yeah. Well, let me talk about a couple of your past work, just because I have enjoyed your film. I mean, your first film that I knew of, obviously you had been working in Britain a little bit longer, to my knowledge. But the first film I was aware of, because I was an insane fan of Gary Oldman, was Criminal Law.
Oh, God, just my first movie ever.
Yeah. Well, you had those couple of, you know, romps in the 70s that were a little bit on the low budget end, right?
I did too. I did 2 of those sex comedy films.
Yeah.
I did a film called Sex Thief, and I did Eskimo Nell. And then I did a movie called Three for All, which was trash, basically. The script was shit, and the film was shit. And then I gave it up. Yeah. And basically, basically what I did was I gave it up. I became a line producer. Would you believe that?
Yeah, no, I saw. I did see it because there was.
If you look on the credits of Scum, have you ever heard of that movie?
Until recently, before I setting up the interview, there was that I knew some of your British TV work, but I didn't know about the before that.
No, I did. Well, I was line producer on that. I was line producer on Scum, which was a very successful film, terrific movie, which was Ray Winston's first movie ever, right?
Yeah.
And then that was a hit, and then I was just a line producer, and then I was taken on to the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, which was the what do you call it? The Sex Pistols.
Yes.
Because the manager had run off with all the money, Malcolm McLaren, and gone to Rome with all the money.
Didn't Roger Ebert have something to do with that?
I honestly don't know.
There was, I remember him having something because he wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and he also he had something to do with the Sex Pistols around that time. But I don't know if he was.
Well, maybe not that I know, but here's the thing. The point was that what was very funny was that the
Hello.
like $1 million or whatever it was to Rome, and I got called into
Oh, there you are. Sorry, you kind of went black for a second, and there was no sound. So you got to start.
I'm just saying, with the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, what happened was I was brought in as line producer to finish it off after they finished shooting. Julian Campbell had shooting it.
Right.
And every week, a guy would come over from Jersey, which was a tax break kind of place, with a case full of money and pay everybody in cash. And McLaren had run off with all the money to Rome, right?
Right.
And then someone said, well, we've got someone to finish the film who's going to finance it. So I met this guy with long hair and it turned out to be Richard Branson. So before the airline, or before before he was involved in Virgin. So it was incredible. And he paid $150,000 at the time in the 70s.
That
was a lot of money, so.
Oh yeah. Yes, yeah, for real. But like I said,
then I started the TV series, so that's
yeah. I really need to go back and see the Edge of Darkness miniseries because I love the film. Well,
the series is much better than the film, and the reason is simple because the series is 6 hours, and it won 6 Academy Awards for Best Actor, Best Everything, and the story takes 6 hours to tell. That's the problem. And unfortunately, in the movie, I felt that I thought it was, the movie was fine, except that I felt in compressing it to 120 minutes, it lost it. So you should watch the series. It's a very different kettle of fish.
I love a lot of British shows anyway, so that'll be right up my alley, I think.
You should see that,
yeah. I remember when Edge of Darkness came out, it was around the time Mel had a lot of bad press going on at the same time. Did you kind of feel like that took a lot of attention away from the film too?
It did. Well, the point was that I was never that. I always felt that the problem with Mel kind of just existed in LA and just outside LA. But we went to Boston to shoot the film, or when I was scouting for locations and things, and people would shut the door. They would slam the door and say, "No, I won't work on a Mel." And I realized that we had a problem. And so, as a result of that, clearly Mel's reputation from that, because what happened and so forth, was a problem. But he's a terrific guy. He's a hell of an actor.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, it's hard these days when people do things and they get branded with something, I feel like he's somebody that was going through a lot of problems at the time and said and did some things that were the result of those problems. And you know, it's an interesting question about forgiving people some sins, you know, and other
I mean,
you don't forgive as much.
Yeah, you know, and then the thing was, he got, you know, they all went for him and everything else, and you know, it's the old internet and so forth. I mean, you know, what chance do you have? You know, but he's a great guy. You know, he's a really good guy, and yeah, he has some odd ideas and so forth. But as an actor, terrific. And I remember when we shot that film, he came to me and he said, "Look, I'm the actor. You're the director. You tell me what to do." That was his instruction, and he kept by it.
And that was coming off of The Passion of the Christ and
sure.
It's like
he's a terrific director. I mean, Hacksaw Ridge, you know.
Yeah, that's another good one. Yeah, a friend of mine's worked with him once and is planning on working with him again. So, I think he's coming out of this okay.
He's a wonderful actor, and his career has suffered badly because of it.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
You see Mel doing stuff that he's way too talented to. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean.
His talent is way beyond what they make him do. You know?
Yeah, there's a certain level of action. You know, like so-called action actor or people that used to do action films that are getting into these deals where they kind of work a few days or whatever on a set and they make a ton of money and then they. You know, and they get the movie gets the prestige of having the name, but they don't really have to put in a lot of effort.
No, of course they don't. You get Bruce Willis for 4 days, costing $4 million. You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, Arnie comes in for a day's work and gets what?
That's what I'm saying. Know. People have figured out a way to game the system to get a big name on the title. Yeah. Yeah. What's that?
The problem is people pay it.
Yeah.
People pay it.
Yeah, and it doesn't really end up adding much to the film generally.
No. Well, it's the name, isn't it? And you know, it's all to do with foreign sales. If you have Bruce Willis in the film, I'm not sure this is appropriate now, but certainly in the past, when you had Bruce Willis in the movie, it meant you could sell it, you know, a lot of territories because he's in the movie. You had Arnold, or you had, you know, Stallone or whoever it was. You could actually, that meant a lot in terms of foreign sales. And of course, most of these independent movies are set up based on foreign sales, based on the upfront money they get from foreign sales. That's how they finance the movies.
Yeah. How have you felt? I mean, you've been in the business for a while. How much has the business changed, good or bad, in your opinion, since you began?
Well, first of all, I was sort of, I started off, and you mentioned criminal law, that was with John Daly at Hemdale, right? Kind of a, and we made that, I think, for $3.5 million, I can't remember, and then beyond that, I did something for HBO, and then I did a movie for them, and then I went on to No Escape, which was a sort of, I call a B feature in Australia, right? Yeah. And then, of course, I went on Bond, so that now meant I'm in the studio system, right?
Right.
So once you're in the studio system, it's a whole different ballgame because, you know, there's no contingency to worry about, anything else. They finance it top to bottom. Yes, you have to deal with executives and so forth, but that's okay. And then I did Goldeneye, and then I went on to Zorro for them, and then I did Vertical Limit, all with Sony. I did this whole sort of thing with them. And then I went off independently did Beyond Borders with Angelina Jolie, and then that was independent with Peter Guber, and then came back to the studio to do Zorro, the second one, and then obviously Casino Royale. So the studio system is very different now. Since Casino Royale, I then did Edge of Darkness, which was independent, GK Films, Grand King, and then of course I did Green Lantern, which was a complete bomb, right? So I go to jail for like whatever time, and I'm doing pilots for ABC. This is all standard practice, right? And then I came back on Foreigner, which fortunately did very well.
Yeah.
You know, and then I did Asset, and then I'm doing this. So, you know.
Yeah. I gotta say, you know, it's the weirdest thing. I know everybody trashes Green Lantern. Maybe it's because I'm such an admirer of yours. I didn't at the time. I didn't want to go see it because I didn't like Ryan Reynolds at the time. I really disliked Ryan. I'm now actually a fan. I went and saw Green Lantern, and I had a blast.
What I felt was there were some very good scenes in it, but and the only reason I did it was I'd never done a superhero movie, and I read all the comics, and to be honest, a lot of it was very faithful to comics. You know, the characters, his character, everything else was all faithful to the thing. And listen, you know, I did it. I worked very hard, and it failed, and that's the truth. And you know, you suck it up, and you think, well, it's the old story. You put as much effort into the failures as you do into the successes, right?
Yeah.
And you've just got to be a big boy about this stuff. You know, okay, well, that was that. I'm sorry. I worked fucking hard to make it really work, right?
Right.
It didn't work, or people didn't like it, so let's move on. So that's
right. Well, in this day and age of like what just happened with Zack Snyder, he released that 4-hour Justice League cut. Was that an issue with the edit at all? Was the studio interjecting, or was the film?
Well, it's interesting because my cut got put out at one point. What happened was that the difference in the cuts was this. They cut it so that the prologue, if you will, when they're kids, right? That got cut out completely. So what happens is you start Ryan Reynolds, he's grown up. I mean that sort of metaphorically, because he's a big kid basically.
Yeah.
And he sort of wakes up, he's got to go and do this. He goes into the plane, all of that. And then you get all the flashbacks, right? Which are about what happened to his father, right? If you remember the film. I don't know which version you saw, but anyway, the upshot is that we realize his father died in the plane crash and that he was going to save him, and et cetera, et cetera. My cut was, and they did release it on DVD, was that you start off when they're kids. When he was a little kid of like 10 or 11, fascinated by planes, fascinated, excited, and then you go from there. What the studio did was intercut that. So you never start with that. It was intercut with when Ryan Reynolds is in the plane and the plane is beginning to crash. And now you cut to what happened to his father. So that was the difference, you know.
But this version was on DVD?
Yeah, it's my cut, the extended cut. But what they did was they wouldn't pay for. So essentially, what my cut was, they start off as children. You see all of that, right? The young Ryan Reynolds sees his father die in the plane crash. It's horrible, etc., etc. And then you go. The problem was in my cut was they did that. We cut it like that, but they kept in, because I guess they couldn't afford to change it, the whole flashback sequence in the crash as well, and it didn't need it. It was just about the crash. It wasn't about but they kept that in as well. So really, you're repeating information you've already seen. So.
somebody really knew what they were doing.
What can I tell you? What can I tell you,
Brett? Obviously, you know. Well, like I said, though, I mean, it was a fun film. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed whatever version I ended up seeing. No matter what, I felt it was faithful to my memory as a child reading those comic books. You know, I'm not.
Yeah, and the other big difference was I had an entirely different ending to the whole thing. Yeah. Which was all storyboarded and everything else.
Hello?
And they cut it completely and said, so it ended up, I thought, a bad ending, and they wouldn't pay for it, and they said, no. And I whipped all this out, done all the storyboards, everything else. And they pulled it basically and said, you can't shoot it, it's too expensive. So we ended up with a cheap version. You know, however, you know what? That's studio politics, and if you work for the studios, you know, if you can't take the heat, get out of the fire. That's really good.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. You know, and I to cover a couple other movies. two favorites of yours are the Bond films. I think you've done two of the very best of the series, and I think, honestly, my opinion, and this is even somebody that grew up watching Connery and more, I think Casino Royale is still the best Bond film ever made.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting about that film was the heart of that film is really Eva Green. You know, the great thing is that Daniel was first of all, they all criticized him, but, you know, typical bloody press and everything else, of course.
Yeah.
They all slag him off before they start, you know. He's a blonde Bond, he doesn't look very handsome, all this crap.
Right.
And by the way, you sort of got some of that with Pierce. Of course, he's very handsome and so forth, but I remember them saying he can't drive a stick drive, he can't do this, all the usual bullshit that they come out with. However, Daniel was absolutely determined on that film to make it work and to prove a point, and he did. And we worked very hard on that movie. And to be absolutely honest, I think it's his best performance in Bond. I honestly do.
I agree.
He's thinking with his heart instead of his head. He plays that brilliantly well. I think, if anything, he's become too polished. You know what I mean? Now it's sort of, I think the humor has sort of gone by the wayside a little bit, and he's so polished. He's a very fine actor, but he's so polished now that sort of, it's like a veneer almost, you know?
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm dying to see this no pun intended, dying to see this last one. I mean, it's been held off for so long now. It's like I just can't wait to see the damn thing. But and I know you get you no doubt get this question, so I apologize for asking. But I mean, his time as Bond is over, and you've jump started each of the last two Bonds, new Bonds. Have you even remotely started getting feelers about looking into whatever they do next?
To be honest, I haven't really. I don't know where they'll go with it. I mean, Daniel bought, when we our brief for Casino Royale was to bring it back to reality, the whole film. What they felt was, the producers felt the previous one had gone too kind of fantastical and bought with invisible cars and ice palaces and all that nonsense, right? Even there was some very good action in it, and said, well, it sort of, it was getting too extreme. And with Casino, we all sat down and said, look, we have to come back to the books, basically. We have to. We have to absolutely bring it back to reality and make it a much tougher, more gritty Bond. And, you know, who better than Daniel to do that? And despite sort of, you know, a lot of criticism and everything else, Daniel came in and did a very fine job of it.
Yeah. The thing I love, because I've watched it semi-recently, I've probably watched it, I don't know how many times, quite honestly. I was really, I can't say enough how stunned I was at how, because by that point, it's like, you know what Bond is. You know that it's not going to, you don't think it's going to go in a direction that's going to really fly too high off into greatness, you know. But everything was dialed down to make it personal instead of fantastical. You know, it wasn't Roger Moore on skis shooting at people and you know, the like.
Well, the thing is that we tried to, you know, if you really analyze it, the action is, the idea was to do as little CGI as possible and make everything, all the action, as real as possible. Well, of course, you can't jump off cranes one to another, and it's absurd if you really think about it. But you can. What's the word? Make the audience think that it's real. Okay.
Yeah.
And that parkour chase at the beginning was, let's keep it as real as possible. All we need to do is remove wire cables. Otherwise, we keep it absolutely real. We don't get into CGI. We don't, and we achieved that, and that was it. And as always with Bond, you sit down and you say, well, what haven't we seen? What is new? In the case of Goldeneye, nobody had seen a tank chase through the middle of St. Petersburg, right? Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But nobody had seen that. Nobody had seen somebody take a dive off a dam, right? So those were the two things in that movie. But with this one, I remember the script had 6 lines, and it basically said, we've now going to have a parkour chase, and we're going to make it the best parkour chase ever filmed.
I think that was achieved.
I think it probably was, but that's what the writer quite rightly wrote. You know, they obviously can't. And at the end, and that was the writer's idea, was the parkour chase, even though, of course, we expanded it and made it what it was. But the sinking house at the end was the second thing that had never been done, ludicrous though it is, if you really think about it.
Oh, sure.
You know, the physics don't make any sense at all. But the idea, you know, that the house is sinking in Venice, because we all know Venice is sinking, that was the conceit, and that was the writers came up with that idea, and so, you know, we followed it through. However, the real credit for that movie goes to Paul Haggis, who wrote the script.
Yeah.
He wrote the whole script from beginning.
Yeah. I think he added the right element of, like I said, personal drama of things meaning something in the moment, you know, and beyond.
Absolutely.
Yeah, bigger things.
Yeah, he did a great job. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still, every time I watch that movie, the scene with the rope with Mads and
oh God,
well,
if you read the book, it was a carpet beater. But I changed it to a rope because we're in a ship, and there's something more agonizing about a huge knot at the end, hitting you in the ball. So, you know, that was, and Daniel played that brilliantly. I mean,
he did. I couldn't imagine the strength. And obviously, he didn't get hit. But I'm just saying that in that moment, have someone having that strength to basically laugh it off, because I was groaning every time it happened.
To give the middle finger to this guy, you know, and kind of almost laugh in his face was, you know, a wonderful interpretation. So
I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I just have a couple other small questions for you. What you've got? You've obviously got the next film that you're working on now. How? I'm trying not to be. Look, you're an older gentleman. I'm not.
Sure.
You know. Do you see yourself retiring at some point?
No, what do I retire for? No, look, Clint Eastwood just directed his last film at 90. Are you mad?
Yeah.
Great, and he's done a terrific job. Apparently, it's very good. So
yeah. I mean, do you ever think about? I mean, obviously, you don't think about not wanting to do it anymore.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I know. Look, if I was a banker, then I would probably retire. But filmmaking is, it's in my blood, and I do it. And whether for better or worse, you know, whether the film's good or bad, you know, I'll keep making them. I'll probably drop dead on the set one day, so that's how I'll go out. But, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's great, because I mean, I think that if you have the passion, keep going. You know, I hope I wasn't offending you at all by. I was trying to word it the right way. I wanted to make sure that, you know, I wasn't, you know, being inappropriate in any way. I just was curious, you know. Just
no, mate. No. I'll keep thundering on. Trust me. You know, filmmaking is a. It's tough. I mean, filmmaking is tough, but it's we're lucky to be doing it, and you know, my intention is I'll finish this film and I'll go on to the next one. That's what I am doing. You know.
Yeah. Do you foresee yourself wanting to stick with the independent route? Does that fit your life better right now?
I like it. I like it, Brett. I like the independent route. I have a very good producer, Moishe Diamant, who was my producer on the asset, who was terrific. And you know, he made sure I had the time I needed. He also made sure, you know, given tight budget, I think the budget for the asset was about 34. and that's before tax breaks. So I guess with tax breaks, it was obviously quite considerably less. But I have a terrific producer with him, and he's producing this along with some others, but he is on the floor producing, as it were. And I kind of like the independent thing. I honestly do. I mean, the point with the studio stuff, first of all, there's no middle-range films being made. I mean, they're all either independent or they're $200 million movies or $300 million movies, whatever, or somewhere in between. So the truth is that I like this independent stuff. I do really.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how, because I've been a film obsessive since I was a teenager, and I recall when Goodfellas was released. You know, that was around the time I started really pointing out like what films cost, so you had an idea. And I remember it being such a big deal that he was barely able to get Goodfellas made at like 25 million, whatever, for 90. You know, and it's like to consider the budgets we have now that are $300 million. It's like,
but I mean, Bond is up there with $300 million from now on. I mean, if you think back to Casino Royale, it cost us with tax breaks 134. You know, that was the budget. And you go back to Goldeneye, it cost 58. That was the final negative cost. I mean, it just skyrocketed this stuff.
And it seems like no matter all the computer age, everything's only ended up costing more.
I know. Oh God, you know,
bizarre. Go ahead.
So I'm just saying that it's so interesting with sequels and things. You know, you look at something like Die Hard, right? The first Die Hard is way and beyond the best of those movies, right?
Oh, for sure.
And that's because it's got its feet on the ground. It's kind of realistic. It doesn't go into, the bigger is better kind of syndrome, right? And it's terrific. It's a great movie. And ever since then, they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're not as good, and they're worse and worse and worse, despite the more money they invest. You know. And
well, I will say, McTiernan. McTiernan made a pretty good third one.
Yes, he did. He did. You're right. But I still think his first one was.
Of course.
And McTiernan's done other great work as well. Hunt for Red October was a terrific movie, right?
Yeah.
He did that. Predator. The original Predator was.
Thomas Crown Affair. The
Thomas Crown was great. Really good.
Yeah.
You know.
What about is McTiernan somebody you know?
Who?
John McTiernan, somebody you know?
I've met him. Yeah, I've met John.
Yeah. I was just curious because I know that he had a lot of issues, and I know that he's probably in movie jail. But
it's kind of sad because he did. I think he did Rollerball, which was a failure. And he went to jail, I think, for because of that ridiculous situation with Pelicano, or whoever the cop was, the private investigator. But he's a very talented filmmaker, you know, and he's done some great films. And I don't know where he's gone now. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Some people. Sorry, we're getting some feedback. Let me wrap it up, and then I'll be able to let you go, because I know it's getting late there. But really, thank you a lot for doing this today, Martin. It's really been an honor. This has kind of been, as somebody that's loved your films for so long, I couldn't imagine a day where I'd actually sit across from you, even if it's virtually, having a conversation. So I wish you good luck with The Asset, which is coming out the 23rd of April.
Well, I hope you get to see it, because I think it's a very entertaining film. I mean, I wouldn't go beyond that. I just think it's very entertaining, and it's with that cast and everything else. I was very pleased with the end result, and I'm not often very pleased, but I thought
that's good.
Sort of. For what it is, if you see which is entertainment. God help us, that should be. God help us, that should be a negative. But I think it's. I think that turned out well.
Yeah, but The Asset is coming out in theaters, correct?
Yes, it is, apparently. I mean,
Yeah.
I say apparently because I can't quite keep up with the COVID barometer, if you see what I mean. Things change daily, basically.
Well, I'll definitely check it out no matter what, even if it doesn't end up, even if it bypasses theaters for some reason.
That's terrific, Brett. All right, mate. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, too. Have a great rest of your day and stay healthy.
Same to you, mate. Cheers up. Bye.
Bye.